Hi everyone, welcome back to GoLocal Live. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us this sunny Friday afternoon here in downtown Providence. I'd like to thank a regular for coming on, Robert Whitcomb, GoLocal columnist. Thank you for joining today.
Nice to see you, Kate.
It was another busy week here in Providence,
Yep.
the country, and around the world. Let's talk a little bit earlier this week. Little Rhodey, the automated vehicle.
That's right, yeah, May
circling
mobility.
May
Right,
mobility
yeah.
between Olneyville, the State House, the train station, on a continuous loop throughout the day. We had the opportunity to be there, and I'm sure folks have seen that video. It's not completely driverless. There is an attendant who sits
Right.
there at the front.
And how long can they pull that off? That's expensive. That's expensive, especially if they ultimately try to turn that into some sort of revenue raiser, charge a fare. Then these little buses only take 6 people, right?
Correct.
So what's the economic model for this going forward? And also, the other big question is, when will most people dare to get into a vehicle without a person driving it?
A person. So they did
Yeah.
say at the presser, I guess Rhode Island came into some money from the Volkswagen settlement.
Yeah.
This is really a pilot project, if you will, trying to collect data and whatever shape
And it's getting
form.
national attention. It's been in the national press, and it's probably going to be a great thing for a while for Olneyville, which is becoming very hip anyway.
It is quite hip.
Yeah, so it's really a neat idea. I just looking forward on
Once
this
the
thing.
Volkswagen money dries up.
Right.
and so,
What happens then? How are you going to pay for this thing? Assuming you for quite a long time need an attendant, which basically means an emergency driver, right?
It does mean
take
an
a
emergency
turn.
driver.
So when an 18-wheeler is
Well, I'll
spinning
tell
in a
you,
direction.
GoLocal will be
So,
putting
I
up a
don't know.
story very shortly
Yeah.
pertaining to how the NTSB
Oh,
came
yeah.
down
National
on
Transportation
came
Safety
down
Board.
on a Tesla automated vehicle accident. You'll have to check that out and go.
Is that the
local
one out
shortly.
west when someone was killed?
Yes, we
Yeah.
have that finding, and we'll share that with
So
you.
there are two questions. Well, 3 or 4 actually.
I'm sure
How many
there's a
people?
lot of
A lot of
questions.
questions. How popular will this be? How used will this thing be? When will they stop having attendants, meaning emergency drivers? And when will the vast bulk of the population be willing to get into a vehicle driving on public roads without someone there to, overturn the computer's decision?
Well, I have to say, I know technology
know.
is moving at such a
Yeah.
rapid pace, but the
Yes,
fact
yeah.
that they have an attendant, this accident that
Right.
occurred, these accidents
Yeah.
occurred with Teslas, with people
Right.
who are still at the car but letting the automated system take over, but yet still crashing. I think there's some bugs that still need
Yeah,
to
I
be
think there
worked
are,
out.
and the economics of this. I'm just getting back to the other question. Will eventually a fare be charged for this? I would think eventually.
That's a good
After
question.
the year that
well,
this
you'll
program.
be
yeah.
microchipped and you'll be charged right away. So
Yeah,
don't-
right.
don't
Yeah. Well, I have chips already in my body.
Don't
actually.
worry about
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Speaking of things coming to light, I'm going to talk a little bit about the
Yeah.
video that GoLocal uncovered earlier this week from a few years ago, but still very germane, about a Partners Health exec talking about how they use the model to increase their bottom line.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, well, I don't know that much about that, so you've got to tell me more about that. I'm quite aware of how healthcare companies operate, though, as you know.
Well, it was an internal meeting.
Partners is can be pretty rapacious. Is that what we're trying to talk about?
Clearly, well, they came back and said this video was
Yeah.
a number of years old, but since then we've seen, obviously, Massachusetts take
Yeah.
a number of steps to say, you have a monopoly here.
These are the folks who do, one surgeon will do 2 or 3 surgeries at the same time.
Well, it is interesting because GoLocal did report this week that
Yeah.
Governor Raimondo, and we have sources
Yeah.
that we know that she has staff out there.
She's pulling back on this thing now.
Considering the implications for what would take place here in Rhode
Yeah,
Island.
yeah.
Because we had Carl Waddenston, the head of VIPCO and
Right.
Commerce Rhode Island board member, on earlier this week. Because when they go through the process, right, Attorney General's got one bucket that they're looking at. Department of Health in
Right.
conjunction with the Attorney General's got another bucket. But there's ancillary impacts that I don't
Right.
think necessarily, they're not
Huge.
part of the review process.
I still think in the long run, it's most likely there'll be just one system here. Maybe what we now call Care New England and Lifespan will merge in some way, and then maybe they'll be merged into Boston. I don't know. I mean, it's really hard to avoid this sort of giant gaping mouth of the Boston healthcare system. And partners they're tough there.
Well,
They're tough.
and as we repeatedly point out, just the sheer size of partners, the budget is 50% larger than the state
Well,
of Rhode Island.
also that they're in a sleeping bag with the Harvard Medical School, which is huge, and it's how do you compete with that when it's so close?
Well, we
So
shall
I don't
see.
know. I hope that some independence can be maintained here, so they can do. They can continue to do some sophisticated procedures here too, not just the usual tonsillectomy. You're right.
Well, you've got your cheat sheet here, and you're telling us what
right.
we got.
Well,
in store this weekend.
I'll say a few words about the buses. Also, a very interesting thing going on in Connecticut. They're looking and using a payroll tax, starting a Connecticut payroll tax to pretty much replace the income tax. And part of this is a way of getting around SALT, under the 2017 tax law, which was basically to screw the Democratic-run states. You're losing a big tax benefit from being able to deduct state and local taxes. So it's a way of getting at that, and it's a way of making a lot of people happy by basically getting rid of the income tax in Connecticut. So I immediately thought, what's the lesson? Are there lessons here? Apparently they're not going to do it this year, but it is serious. The governor's in on it, the legislator's on it. I'm surprised it hadn't got more attention.
Well, people reading on Sunday will
The
find out more about it.
5% payroll tax.
Right across the board.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And we see what else is going on. Doris Day, of course, died. And so I ruminate on, Doris Day in the 50s and how, her I found her singing rather cloying. The big band stuff was better before but it sort of says something about the way people acted, the kind of the innuendo rich but nothing overt sexuality. The irony that her
Doris
greatest
Day
co-star in Rock Hudson, of course, was gay, and a close friend of hers, okay? And I thought that was, and so I kind of ruminate on that, and then I think of the 50s, fertility rate is way down. We're not, except for the immigrants, we're not replacement level. And it's my view, it's because a lot of young people, they aren't just going to postpone. They don't want kids. They want to go on vacations. And, with income inequality and, the gig economy and other stuff,
Well,
I think a lot of people just don't want to.
This obviously, the
kids.
point
Yeah.
that keeps getting made is, the percentage of young folks today that are going to do better than their parents' generation.
No, way down.
You see, home ownership, child rearing,
child rearing,
things that if there's financial implications and, they're not doing better than parents, then these decisions have, that has consequences.
Right, a lot. And, the baby boomers, people like me, we had fewer kids. Now the next couple of generations are going to have even fewer. I think economics is behind a lot of this. I also think it's, individuals just want to have a good time. They want to go on vacation. And they don't want to worry about money in a society which is increasingly gig-based and income inequality. And as you say, all the polls suggest that they aren't going to do as well. They have not been doing as well as the baby boomers, those thieves, have done. The worst generation in American history, the baby boomers.
Baby boomers, you'll have to read all about it with Robert Whitcomb's column this coming Sunday.
Okay.
Appreciate it as always.
Happy weekend.
Happy weekend. And don't go anywhere. We're going to finish up here on Go Local with Alicia Pino talking about Culture Fest this weekend in Providence. We'll be right back.